In this video, we're going to work through example 3. And this is actually when we're going to get to factor the GCF that we just got done finding out of a given polynomial. So, for example A, if I was to evaluate that, I would see that it has two terms. 15x squared is a term and 100 is a term in this case. So my first step in order to factor this, to get it completely factored, is to find the GCF. Again, GCF, finding the GCF is the first step always to consider. Sometimes there won't be one, but in this case there is. So the GCF, I'm going to work just with the coefficients first. So the numbers 15 and 100. So if I break this down, 15 can be broken down by not 2 because it's not an even number, so I'll jump up from 2 to 3. And then 15 divided by 3 is 5. That is factored as far as it goes. 100, an easy one for 100 is 10. 100 divided by 10 is 10. 10 times 10 is 100. Those are factors. Nothing's in common yet, so I have to break down these a little bit further. 10 divided by 5 is 2, and 10 divided by 2 is 5. So those are the factors. Prime factorization for both terms. Now, the only number that's in common, and the biggest number that's in common, is 5. So I know that my GCF will include 5. Now, if I look, this factor, 15x squared, has two x's. This factor, 100, or this term, 100, doesn't have any x's. So there is not an in common factor between the variables because this 100 doesn't have any x's, so I can't factor any x's out. So my GCF in this case is just 5. That is the first step. First step is done. I found the GCF. Now, the second step, I'm going to factor 5 out of both terms and write what remains inside a parenthesis. So please follow this step. I need to see this work exactly like I'm showing it. So if I'm going to factor out 5, I'm going to first put 5 next to parentheses. And I'm going to write what remains inside of parentheses. So, if it's 5, then I'm going to do first term. If you can do this in your head, fine. It's going to be division. 15 divided by 5, actually 15x squared. But if you can't do this in your head, then I need to see this side math done every time. So I have 15x squared divided by 5. You need to be able to do this step before I can help you if you can't just do this mentally in your head. So the only things that can work together for this are the the coefficients. 15 divided by 5 is 3. So I have a 3 left over after I factor 5 out of that first term. Now x squared was not divided by anything, so I still have an x squared left over. So 15x squared became 3x squared after I took this GCF out of it. Let's move on. 100 is positive, so I know that a plus sign will go here. If 100 was negative, I would put minus there, but it's positive. Now, same thing. I'm running out of room a little bit, but I can still show 100 divided by 5, my GCF of 5. You can do that on your calculator. Hopefully you can do that in your head. 100 divided by 5 is 20. So I'm left with the factor form of 5 times 3x squared plus 20. And that is my final answer. Now, hopefully you can recognize that the original quadratic binomial up here and this factored form are the same quadratic binomial. This up here is just standard form, ax squared plus bx plus c, and this down here is what's called factored form. So that is how you factor out a GCF after you find it. Now, part B is a little bit different, so I'm going to do part B as an example as well because it will include variables in my GCF. So let me make some room for this. So for part B, the first step again is to find the GCF. Now, if you're catching on to this, you can try this one on your own, but I'm going to show you how to do this as well, just if you need a little bit more help. The GCF, so between 8 and 4. 8 can be broken down by 2. 2 times 4 is 8. 4 can be broken down by 2 and 2. And I can also break down 4 with my 8 to 2 and 2. Now, again, I see 2's in common, but there's a number that's already bigger and in common. That is indeed 4. So the GCF of the coefficients 8 and 4 is 4. All right? Now, in this case, the m's are included in both. This term of 8m squared has 2 m's. This term of 4m has 1m. So the only m that is in common, or the most amount of m's that are in common, is 1. Only 1m. So my GCF this time is 4m. Now, it's the same thing. So for step 2, I'll draw a little line to signify that this is step 2. I'm going to take my 4m and put it outside of parentheses. I'm getting in the room of part C. And so you might have to try part C on a separate sheet of paper if you're running out of room. But I take the GCF of 4m, and I'm going to divide it out of both of my terms up here. So I'll switch to blue. So I'm going to divide it out of 8m squared first. If you can do that in your head, great. But if not, you have to show this side math. You have to get in the habit of doing this. So if I work with the coefficients first, 8 divided by 4 is 2. Good. Now, if I'm doing the variables, the exponent rules, base divided by base, you subtract the powers. This m, even though it's not written, if the power is never written with the variable, you can always assume that it's 1. So base divided by base up here divided by base down there, 2 minus 1 is m raised to the 1. I don't have to put it though. Another way you can look at that is there's 2 m's on top and 1 m on bottom. So I can cancel out one of the m's, leaving me with just 1 m that I put right here. So my first term of 8m squared becomes 2m inside the parentheses. Now, it is plus, so I'm going to plus right here, and my next term is 4m. So doing side math again, 4m divided by my GCF of 4m, 4 divided by 4 is 1. M divided by m is 1, and they cancel out, so I'm left with no m's anymore. So this is my final answer in factored form. Now again, up here, standard form, 8m squared plus 4m, is the same thing as down here, except for down here, my answer is just written in factored form. What would happen if I multiplied this 4m back into my binomial? Be ready to answer that question or be able to discuss that question with me. So go ahead and try example C, and then for challenge, go ahead and try A and B. And then for your in-class practice, I've given you 20 problems to factor. Mastery will include 18 out of 20. So if you can get to that level, you have mastered the factoring skill, or finding the GCF.